The rain had
It's all
not
right, you're
stopped
safe
all
here.
night. It
Thank
slid
you,
down the glass walls of the Skylux penthouse like
I don't know
ribbons
what to
of
say.
silver. The city lights
I'm
below
gonna do
blurred
it.
into a thousand
They dared
broken
me,
reflections.
and I'm gonna do
At that
it.
exact moment, Claire Evans woke
I'm
up
so
to the
cold
soft
and
hum
wet.
of the heater and the faint scent of cedar and espresso.
Please, come inside.
Her
Let's
head
get some
throbbed,
coffee.
her throat dry. She blinked once, then twice. The blanket draped over her was silk.
Here's your coffee.
Far too
Enjoy.
expensive to belong to anyone she knew. And the couch she was lying on this was not her apartment. The realization hit her like cold water. What the hell? She whispered.
I know I
sitting
shouldn't
up too
have. It's
fast.
just...
Flashes from last night rushed
Hey,
back.
it's all right.
Her friend's laughter, the stupid dare at the charity gala,
Coffee?
the storm, the elevator breaking down, the stranger who had offered her shelter until
I
it
understand the
passed.
board's
The tall
concerns,
man
but we
with the
must
dark vest
prioritize
and quiet
long-term
eyes,
shareholder
the
value
one she
over these
thought was a
short-sighted
driver.
quarterly gains.
The living room looked
This
like
data
a scene
proves
from
it.
a magazine
Appreciate you being here.
minimalist. Dark wood, glass
I'm happy
walls
to be by your
overlooking the
side.
skyline. A grand piano glistened in the corner, untouched but polished. On the coffee table, a folded note rested beside a glass of water. Her name was written in a man's sharp handwriting. Claire, breakfast is on the counter. Do not worry. You fell asleep on the couch. A. Her pulse raced. She murmured. Who even? She stood, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders, barefoot on the cold marble floor. Her reflection in the window stared back, makeup smudged, hair a mess, still in the gown from last night's dare. Great. She had spent the night in a stranger's penthouse, one that probably cost more than she would make in 10 years. Then she heard it, the soft click of the front door unlocking. Her heart nearly stopped. A man stepped inside, tall, composed, his coat glistening with rain. He carried 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag. Their eyes met, and for a brief second, time froze. You are awake? He said, voice calm, deep, professional. Yes, Claire stammered. I think there has been a huge mistake. He placed the coffee on the table, studied her for a moment, and smiled faintly. You were freezing last night. I did not want you driving in that storm. The couch was the safest option. His tone was simple, almost gentle, but something in his posture radiated quiet authority. He moved like someone used to being obeyed. Claire tried to gather herself. Thank you, I guess. I should go. I probably caused enough trouble. He nodded toward the window. Elevators are down again. Power grid issue. You may need to wait a little longer. Her cheeks burned. Perfect. So I am trapped in a billionaire's penthouse because I lost a dare. One corner of his mouth curved. Billionaire? He repeated, amused. That is a bit dramatic. Claire crossed her arms, trying to hide her embarrassment. Please, look at this place. No one owns a glass piano unless they are at least millionaire adjacent. He laughed quietly, almost surprised by himself. Coffee? She hesitated, then took the cup. The warmth steadied her. For a moment, the storm outside felt distant. I am Adrian, he said finally. Adrian Cole. The name echoed in her mind. Cole Industries. The skyline outside flickered with the logo of his company on the tallest tower. She nearly dropped the cup. You have got to be kidding me, she breathed. He looked at her, expression unreadable. What? You are that Adrian Cole. He tilted his head, studying her reaction. And you are the woman who fell asleep on my couch after calling me a driver. Her mouth fell open. Oh my God. His faint smile deepened. Do not worry. I have been called worse. For the first time, she saw the humor behind the polished exterior, the kind of charm that was dangerous, precisely because it seemed effortless. Outside, thunder rolled again over the city, and she realized the storm was far from over. Her life, she suspected, would not be either. Now, let us go back to where it all began with Claire, the girl who lost a dare and walked straight into the heart of a billionaire's world. The storm lingered through the next morning. Gray clouds hung low over Manhattan, and the skyline outside Adrian Cole's penthouse looked like a watercolor blurred by rain. Claire sat at the marble counter, her fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee she did not remember asking for. Adrian moved through the kitchen with quiet precision, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a shower. The way he moved steady, efficient, unhurried gave away what he was even before his wealth did. Control was second nature to him. You do not have to look so terrified, he said without turning. I am not keeping you hostage. Claire forced a laugh. That is good to know. Although your elevator is doing a convincing job, he smirked faintly. Maintenance is on it. You will be able to leave soon. Perfect, she said, sipping her coffee. Then I can go home and never talk about how I trespassed into a billionaire's penthouse because of a dare. He raised an eyebrow. Trespassed? I invited you to wait out the storm. You were being polite, she countered. I was being ridiculous. Adrian finally turned to face her. Ridiculous, he repeated. You showed up at a gala in a thrift store gown, told off a man you thought was a driver, and fell asleep mid-sentence on my couch. That is not ridiculous. That is unexpected. His tone was calm, but his eyes held a flicker of amusement that made her heart skip. Claire looked away, trying to hide her blush. Unexpected is a polite way to say a mess. I prefer the first word, he said simply. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Only the rain against the glass broke it. She studied him, the expensive watch, the crisp shirt, the faint tiredness in his expression. There was something about him that did not fit the ruthless reputation she remembered reading online. Do you always bring strangers home from galas? She asked finally. Only the ones who lose dares, he replied. She laughed despite herself. It felt good light, unforced, human. For a brief second, she forgot who he was and who she was not. Then her phone buzzed. A text from her landlord. Rent overdue. Need payment by Friday, or I will have to relist the apartment. Her smile faded. She stood quickly, clutching her bag. I should go. Adrian's expression shifted. Is everything all right? Fine, she said too fast. Just reality calling. He nodded once, polite but observant. The storm has stopped. Let me call you a car. No thank you. I will walk. She turned toward the door, but his voice stopped her. Claire. She hesitated. For what it is worth, he said quietly. Last night was not a mistake. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say something back, something clever or dismissive, but words failed. She just nodded and left. Outside, the city air was sharp and wet. She walked fast, clutching her coat, trying to ignore the ache in her chest that made no sense. He was a man from another world, one she had stumbled into by accident. But his words lingered like the scent of his cologne, clean, precise, impossible to forget. 3 days later, Claire stood behind the counter of the cafe where she worked part-time. The morning rush had barely ended, and her shoes were soaked from the puddles outside. She was wiping down the espresso machine when the door opened. She looked up, expecting another tourist. Instead, it was him, Adrian Cole, in a charcoal coat, completely out of place in a shop that sold $3 coffee and bagels. Her breath caught. You are kidding me. He smiled slightly. Good morning. What are you doing here? I owed you breakfast, he said. You did not touch the one I left. She blinked, caught between annoyance and disbelief. You came all the way downtown to deliver pancakes? Croissants, he corrected, setting down a small white box. And a proposal. Her eyebrows shot up. A proposal? For work, he clarified, and she exhaled. My company is hosting a charity gala next week. We need temporary staff to help manage the art exhibition. Your name came up. My name came up? She repeated, skeptical. He gave a small shrug. I may have suggested it. Claire stared at him, unsure if he was serious. Why me? Because, he said simply, you told me you love art, and you deserve a chance to be somewhere that reminds you why. For a moment, she could not speak. The cafe noise faded, the hum of the city disappeared, and all she could hear was the echo of those words. He slid a card across the counter. If you are interested, call me by tomorrow. Then he turned and left, leaving her standing there, heart racing, the card trembling in her hand. Outside, through the fogged window, she watched him disappear into the rain. And for the first time since that stupid dare, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, what had started as a mistake was something else entirely. Claire did not sleep that night. The business card sat on her nightstand like it was glowing in the dark. Adrian Cole, Cole Industries. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face in the cafe, calm and certain, as if he had already decided what she should do. By morning, she had convinced herself not to call. It was too strange, too fast. She was a barista, not someone who belonged in Billionaire'S galas. Yet by noon, her phone was in her hand, her thumb hovering over his number. Before she could change her mind, she pressed call. Mr. Cole's office, a woman's voice answered. Claire almost hung up, but forced the words out. Hi, this is Claire Evans. He told me to call if I was interested in a job. One moment, please. The line clicked, and then his voice came through. Smooth as ever. I was starting to think you would not call, Adrian said. Well, I almost did not, she replied. But I guess I am curious. Good. Curiosity is the best reason to start anything. Come to Cole Tower at 10 tomorrow. Ask for me. The next morning, she stood at the base of the 50-story glass building, clutching her bag and trying not to stare like a tourist. Inside, everything gleamed chrome elevators, white marble floors, employees moving with quiet efficiency. She felt wildly out of place, but she forced herself to step forward. The receptionist smiled politely. Miss Evans? Mr. Cole is expecting you. When the elevator doors opened at the top floor, she found herself in a space that looked like an art gallery more than an office. Sculptures, soft light, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Adrian stood by the window, phone in hand. He turned when she entered. Claire, he greeted. You came. I almost did not, she admitted. But you did, he said, smiling. That tells me something. He led her to a long conference table covered in sketches and framed photos. The gala theme this year is Reclaiming Hope. We are featuring young, unknown artists. I need someone who can organize the display and talk to them without sounding like a board member. She blinked. You mean, someone who speaks human? Exactly, he said, the corner of his mouth lifting. As he explained the details, she felt the knot in her chest slowly loosen. This was not pity, this was opportunity, and he trusted her to handle it. Over the next few days, Claire worked inside the tower's event floor. She coordinated deliveries, arranged paintings, even gave suggestions that Adrian actually listened to. Sometimes he would stop by late in the evening, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, asking for her opinion on lighting or layout. One night, as they stood by the massive window overlooking the city, she caught her reflection beside her in a borrowed blouse, him in a navy suit, and it hit her just how far apart their worlds were. You know, she said softly, this still feels like a dream I am not supposed to be in. He glanced at her. Maybe you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Her heart skipped. She looked away, pretending to adjust the display labels. You really say things like that, do not you? Only when I mean them, he replied. For the first time, she smiled without overthinking it. By the time the gala night arrived, the ballroom shimmered under chandeliers. Guests in designer gowns drifted through the exhibit, champagne glasses catching the light. Claire stood near the entrance, making sure every painting was in place. Her sketchbook, her secret, was tucked in her bag, but she dared not mention it. Then she saw him, Adrian Cole, walking through the crowd in a tailored black tuxedo, greeting investors and journalists with effortless charm. When their eyes met across the room, he gave her a small nod, professional but warm. It sent a rush of pride through her she did not expect. She was not the girl who lost a dare anymore. She was part of something real. As the music swelled, an event host took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor those who turned compassion into creation. Please welcome our main sponsor, Mr. Adrian Cole. Applause filled the hall. Adrian stepped up, microphone in hand, his voice steady. This event is not about power or profit. It is about the small acts of courage that build the world back piece by piece. And one of those acts came from someone standing right here among you. Claire's breath caught. He looked directly at her. Someone who reminded me, he continued, that kindness still changes lives. The spotlight shifted slightly, brushing over her face before she could move. People turned, curious. Her cheeks burned, but Adrian's gaze held steady. For a heartbeat, the world stopped, and in that silence, she realized whatever this was, it was already bigger than a mistake, or a dare, or even a gift. It was the beginning of something she had not dared to hope for in years. The applause faded, but Claire could still hear the echo of her heartbeat long after Adrian stepped down from the stage. She tried to steady her breathing, pretending to adjust a frame on the wall, but her hands were trembling. People whispered her name now, smiling politely, curious about the girl who reminded the billionaire of kindness. When the gala ended and the guests began to leave, she slipped toward the service hallway, hoping to disappear before anyone stopped her. But Adrian found her first. He stood by the exit, jacket slung over his neck, his tie slightly off. You handled yourself well tonight, he said. You ambushed me, she replied, still flushed. I did warn you, I am unpredictable, he said with You had the entire city watching, and you mentioned me by name. Why? Because you earned it, he said simply. You brought heart to this project. People felt that. Her eyes met his. There was no arrogance in his tone, only sincerity. For a long second, she forgot to breathe. Then a voice interrupted. Mr. Cole, the board members are waiting. A tall woman in a designer suit appeared, efficient and cool. They want to finalize the funding report. Adrian nodded, his expression hardening back into business mode. I will be there in a minute. When the woman left, he turned to Claire again. Stay. I will drive you home after. She hesitated. You really do not have to. I want to, he said quietly. Later that night, his car glided through the city streets, the rain finally gone. The lights reflected off the windshield, painting the leather seats in gold and silver. Claire sat beside him, silent for most of the ride, still unsure what this meant. When they stopped in front of her apartment building, she turned to him. Thank you for the job and for everything. He looked at her for a long moment. You do not have to thank me for something you earned. She opened the door, then paused. You know, for someone who runs half the city, you are surprisingly decent. He smiled, a real one this time. Do not tell anyone. It might ruin my reputation. She laughed softly and stepped out, closing the door behind her. He waited until she was safely inside before driving away. For the next few weeks, Claire tried to return to normal life, but normal no longer fit. The foundation offered her a full-time position, and she began working closely with Adrian's team. Their conversations were easy, filled with teasing, quiet glances, and the kind of warmth that felt dangerously close to something real. But not everyone approved. One afternoon, as she organized files in the foundation office, the same tall woman from the gala approached Victoria Lane, Adrian's chief of operations. You are Claire Evans, correct? Yes. Victoria's smile was polite but cold. Mr. Cole speaks highly of you. That means expectations are high. You are working in a world that does not forgive mistakes. Claire straightened. I will keep that in mind. Good. Because his reputation is worth billions. Be careful not to complicate it. The warning was clear. That evening, Adrian noticed her distant mood as they reviewed reports. You are quiet tonight, he said. Just tired, she replied, not meeting his eyes. He leaned forward. Claire, if something is wrong, tell me. She shook her head. It is fine, but it was not fine. The more she cared, the more she feared becoming a problem in his perfect world. The next morning, she left a short note on his desk. Thank you for everything. But I think it is time for me to step back before this turns into something I cannot handle. When Adrian walked into his office later that day and saw the note, he stood for a long time without moving. The city buzzed below him, but inside, everything went quiet. He had built an empire on control and precision, but this felt like the first thing in years he was not ready to lose. For 3 days, Adrian tried to reach her. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unseen. The note she had left on his desk was the only trace of her, written in steady handwriting that contradicted the turmoil behind it. He reread it more times than he cared to admit. Every word felt like a door closing. At first, he told himself to let her go. People left all the time. That was life at his level, temporary, transactional, predictable. But by the 4th night, as he stared out the glass wall of his office, he realized something had shifted. Her absence echoed louder than the noise of the city below. Across town, Claire tried to settle back into her old rhythm. She picked up more shifts at the cafe, avoided news about the foundation, and told herself she was fine. But every time someone mentioned Cole Industries, her chest tightened. Every time she saw a black luxury car glide by, her heart skipped before reason caught up. One rainy afternoon, she was wiping the counter when an envelope slid across it. No sender's name, just her own, written in that same sharp, familiar handwriting. Inside was an invitation embossed with gold. Cole Foundation, Art for Humanity Gala. The same event she had helped build, now set to honor emerging creators who redefine hope. Her breath caught when she saw a small note attached. Please come. One last time. Ah. She almost tore it in half. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the unfinished truth between them. When the night came, she stood outside the glass doors of the ballroom, clutching her worn coat. Through the windows she saw the glow of chandeliers, the same sea of polished faces, the same skyline she had once admired from the inside. Part of her wanted to turn around, but then she saw him. Adrian stood at the center of the hall, speaking to a crowd. No tuxedo this time, just a simple black suit. The room quieted as he gestured toward a new exhibit unveiled behind him. "This year," he said, his voice steady, "we are featuring someone whose work reminds us that light does not come from perfection, but from persistence." The curtain lifted, revealing a collection of framed sketches, soft, real, deeply human. Claire froze. They were hers. Pages from the sketchbook she always carried but never showed. The signature in the corner read C. Evans. She felt the air leave her lungs. How did he even... Adrian's gaze found her through the crowd. He smiled slightly, then continued. These drawings were never meant to impress investors. They were meant to survive disappointment. To prove that art, like kindness, starts small and still matters. The audience applauded. Claire stood motionless, tears burning her eyes. When he stepped down from the stage, she met him halfway, unable to speak. "I kept my promise," he said softly. "You once told me you dreamed of seeing your work in a gallery. You deserve that." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "You had no right to use my sketches." "I did not use them," he replied. "I honored them. And I gave the profits from tonight to the Community Art Fund under your name." Her lips parted, but no words came. The music swelled in the background, but all she could hear was the thud of her heart. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. "Because you left thinking you were a problem in my world," he said. "You were the only part of it that ever felt real." The noise around them faded. She looked at him, eyes wet, voice trembling. "You are impossible." He smiled gently. "You told me that the first night." For the first time in weeks, she laughed through her tears. He reached for her hand, not commanding this time, but asking. She let him. And under the soft glow of the gallery lights, surrounded by her own art and his quiet redemption, the girl who lost a dare finally found where she was meant to be. The applause faded into soft music, but the moment between them did not. Claire stood surrounded by her own sketches, the same drawings she once hid between coffee receipts and grocery lists. Now they glowed under gallery lights, framed in silver, and for the first time, she did not want to run. Adrian's hand was still warm around hers. "You did this," she said quietly. "We did this," he corrected. "You gave me the reason. I only had the resources." His words were simple, but something inside her shifted. For so long she had been taught to see herself as small, someone whose role was to survive, not shine. And yet here she was, a waitress from Brooklyn, standing beside the man who could buy half the skyline, and somehow they were equals in this space. The guests began to move closer, eager to meet the artist whose story had already spread through whispers. Reporters took notes, investors asked questions, and Claire found herself smiling, answering, laughing, until she saw Victoria Lane standing at the edge of the room. The chief of operations, arms crossed, eyes sharp. When Claire finally broke away to breathe, Victoria approached. "Impressive evening," she said. "Mr. Cole certainly knows how to make a statement." Claire kept her tone polite. "He wanted to support community artists, that is all." Victoria tilted her head. "You believe that? You think this is about art?" Every camera in the room is watching him. Every investor is calculating what kind of man features a waitress at his gala. You might want to ask yourself who benefits most. The words hit like cold water. Claire's smile faltered. "You do not know him," she said. "I know him better than you think," Victoria replied. "And I know what stories like yours cost." Then she walked away, leaving the echo of her heels and doubt heavy in the air. When Adrian found Claire later, she was by the balcony, looking out at the city. "You vanished," he said softly. "Is everything all right?" She turned toward him, her voice low. "Why did you really do this? Be honest. Was it for the foundation? For publicity?" His brows furrowed. "You think I would use you?" "I do not know what to think," she said, the words trembling. "You live in a world where everything has a reason. I do not want to be another one of them." Adrian stepped closer. "You are not a headline, Claire. You are the reason I remember what all this is supposed to mean." She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of manipulation, but found none. Just the quiet sincerity that had undone her from the start. Still, fear clung to her. "I do not want to be someone you rescue." He nodded. "Then do not be. Stand with me instead." The simplicity of it caught her off guard. There was no charm, no pitch, just truth. And for a long second, The walls she had built began to crack. From the ballroom behind them came the sound of clinking glasses, followed by a voice announcing an impromptu toast. Adrian looked back at the crowd, then at her. "Come with me," he said. They stepped back inside together. The guests turned as he lifted his glass. "To the people who remind us that compassion is not weakness," he said. "And to the woman who reminded me that courage does not require wealth, only heart." The room erupted in applause again, but this time Claire did not shrink from it. She looked up at him, her eyes bright, and whispered, "You are not supposed to say things like that in public." He smiled. Then it must be real. And as the music rose and the crowd surrounded them, she realized that this was not the ending she feared. It was the beginning of something steady, fragile, and beautifully real, born from a mistake, tested by pride, and sealed by the quiet courage to stay. The next morning, the newspapers carried the same photograph across every front page. Billionaire Adrian Cole honors waitress turned artist at gala. The caption beneath showed Claire beside him, laughing under the chandelier lights. To the world, it looked like a fairy tale. But inside Cole Tower, it quickly turned into a storm. Board members called emergency meetings. Investors questioned his motives. And by noon, Victoria Lane was waiting in his office, a folder in hand and a calm expression that hid fire. "You wanted to be seen as human," she said coldly. "Congratulations. Now the press is calling it your latest scandal." Adrian closed the newspaper on his desk. "If they have a problem with the foundation supporting real talent, they can take their money elsewhere. It is not about the foundation." She snapped. "It is about perception. You put a waitress in the spotlight. The board thinks you are distracted, compromised." He leaned back, unfazed. "They are wrong. They are powerful," she countered. "And they want her out of the project before your next quarterly report." The silence that followed was sharp. Adrian's jaw tightened. "That will not happen." Victoria sighed, her voice dropping. "I am trying to protect you, Adrian. She does not belong in this world. You know that." He looked up, his tone like steel. "Then maybe this world needs to change." Across town, Claire was already feeling the weight of the headlines. Customers at the cafe whispered when she passed. Some smiled kindly, others with judgment. By the third comment about the Billionaire'S charity case, she left early, unable to stand the pity. That evening, she went to the foundation to clear her workspace, hoping to avoid him. But when she entered the gallery room, Adrian was already there, staring at one of her framed sketches, the one of the skyline seen from his penthouse window. "You should not be here," she said quietly. He turned. "Neither should you." "I came to get my things," she said. "I do not want to cause more trouble for you." He walked closer, eyes steady. "You are not trouble, Claire. You are the only honest thing that has happened to me in years." Her throat tightened. "Adrian, they are saying awful things. About us. About me." "Let them," he said firmly. "They do not know you." "They do not have to," she whispered. "They know you. And that is enough to destroy everything you built." He stepped forward until she could see the exhaustion behind his confidence. "Do you think I built all of this to live afraid of people's opinions? I will not let them define what matters." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "You cannot fight the world for me." "I am not fighting for you," he said softly. "I am fighting because of you." The words hung between them, raw and real. For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights flickered through the glass walls, reflecting their faces side by side, two people from opposite worlds, drawn together by something they could not name yet, could no longer deny. Finally, Claire broke the silence. "If you really mean that, then stop trying to protect me. Let me stand beside you." He blinked, surprised, then smiled slowly. "You never stop proving me wrong, do you?" "Get used to it," she said, her voice shaking but sure. He laughed quietly, and in that small, fragile sound, the tension eased. When she turned to leave, he called after her, "Claire." She looked back. "Tomorrow morning, come to the board meeting. If they want to question why you belong here, let them ask you directly." Her eyes widened. "You cannot be serious." "I am," he said. "You wanted to stand beside me. That is where it starts." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then, I will be there." As she walked out into the night, the city wind was cold, but her heart burned steady. Whatever tomorrow held, judgment, scandal, or redemption, she was done running. She was ready to fight for what was real. The next morning, Cole Tower buzzed with tension. The board meeting had drawn every senior executive, every major investor, and every rumor swirling around Adrian Cole's name. Reporters lingered outside the lobby, waiting for a headline. Upstairs, in the glass-walled conference room, Adrian stood at the head of the long table, his expression calm but unreadable. When Claire stepped out of the elevator, the air seemed to shift. She wore a simple navy dress, the same one she had once used for cafe interviews, but she carried herself differently now, steady, unafraid. Conversations hushed as she entered. Victoria Lane was the first to break the silence. "I see you took his invitation seriously." Claire met her gaze. "You said this world does not forgive mistakes. I came to prove it also remembers integrity." A few board members exchanged glances, amused and skeptical. Adrian gestured for her to sit beside him, but she shook her head and remained standing. "I would rather speak before you all," she said quietly. One of the older men leaned back in his chair. "Miss Evans, this meeting is about financial stability, not sentiment." Claire nodded. "Then let us talk about stability. It does not come from fear. It comes from trust, and trust only exists when people believe in the person leading them. I met Mr. Cole when he was just a stranger offering me shelter during a storm. Not a billionaire, not a symbol, just a person. The man I met that night is the same man you work for." Her voice did not waver. "You may think his decision to support my work was reckless. But if compassion is a risk, then I hope more leaders are reckless enough to take it." The room fell quiet. Even Victoria hesitated before folding her arms. Adrian finally spoke. "You heard her. The foundation will continue its community partnerships, and Miss Evans will serve as project director. Any investor unwilling to stand behind that vision is free to withdraw." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. One man whispered, "You cannot be serious." Adrian's gaze hardened. "Completely." Victoria stood, voice sharp. "You are jeopardizing your company's credibility for a personal attachment." He looked straight at her. "No, I am restoring it. For years, we built walls of numbers and marble. It is time we build something that matters." For a moment, no one moved. Then the oldest board member, a quiet man with silver hair, spoke up. "Perhaps we forgot why we started this foundation. Maybe it is time we remembered." The tension eased. One by one, heads began to nod. The meeting adjourned without another protest. When the others left, Adrian turned to Claire. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did," she said. "If I am going to stand beside you, it has to be as your equal." He studied her for a long second, the faintest smile touching his lips. "You already are." Later that afternoon, they walked out of the tower together. The reporters surged forward, shouting questions, cameras flashing. Claire froze, but Adrian reached for her hand, not to hide it, not to perform, but to steady her. A journalist shouted, "Mr. Cole, are the rumors true? Is she the reason behind the foundation's new direction?" Adrian looked at the sea of microphones and said simply, "She is the reason we found one." The words spread across headlines within hours, but Claire no longer cared. That evening, they stood on the rooftop of the foundation building, the sun setting behind the skyline. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the faint sounds of the city below. "You know this changes everything," she said softly. "I am counting on it," he replied. For the first time, the world below did not feel like it belonged to someone else. It felt shared, messy, imperfect, but shared. And as the last streak of sunlight disappeared behind the glass towers, Claire realized that courage was not about facing storms. It was about choosing to stay after they passed. 6 months later, spring returned to New York. The city was alive again, park benches crowded, windows open, light spilling over everything it touched. At the edge of the Westbrook Art Center, a new exhibition banner fluttered in the breeze. The Art of Change, curated by Claire Evans. Inside, guests moved slowly through the gallery. The walls were lined with sketches from community artists the foundation had funded, each piece carrying a story of survival and renewal. In the center of it all stood Claire, greeting visitors, calm and confident. She had left the cafe long ago. Now she was the director of a project that gave others the same chance she once received. From across the room, she caught a familiar figure leaning casually near one of her favorite paintings. Adrian, in a simple gray suit, not the billionaire on magazine covers, but the man who once handed her coffee in the morning light. Their eyes met, and the noise of the crowd faded like a tide pulling back. He walked toward her, hands in his pockets. "The turnout is incredible," he said. "You built all of this." She smiled. "We built it." He looked around, then back at her. "No, Claire. You gave it heart. I just followed your lead." She laughed softly. "I never thought I would hear Adrian Cole admit he followed anyone's lead." He shrugged. "First time for everything." For a moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by the soft hum of music and conversation. Then he reached into his jacket and took out something small, a thin silver key tied with a ribbon. "What is this?" she asked. He handed it to her. "The gallery is yours, officially. The board voted last week. It will operate independently under your name." Her breath caught. "You did not have to." "I wanted to," he said gently, "because every story that starts with a mistake deserves a second chapter." Tears filled her eyes. "Adrian," he smiled, "you can thank me later, or over dinner tonight." She laughed through the tears, shaking her head. "You never stop, do you? Not when it comes to you." Outside, the city lights flickered to life, casting gold over the glass windows. The guests began to applaud as the final speech concluded, but Claire barely heard them. All she could feel was the steady warmth of the man beside her, the one who had taught her that compassion was not weakness, that courage could exist quietly, and that love, when built on honesty, could outlast any storm. She turned toward him and whispered, "This is the best mistake we ever made." He smiled. "The only one worth repeating." And as the doors of the gallery opened to the night, they stepped forward together, no longer the billionaire and the girl who lost a dare, but two people who had learned that the most powerful art of all was the life they chose to create side by side.